Hey, friends, welcome back to the Radical Care for Christian Counselors podcast. And I'm here today with my friend Justin Janowski. If you were here last week, you got to hear some of his story. And if you haven't, if you missed last week, you can always listen to this podcast and go back and listen. It's a great podcast to sit there and listen to and get to know Justin better. But today, before we get started, I want to make sure that you're in the right place. If you're a Christian counselor, mental health professional, pastoral care leader, coach, if you are so tired of doing the one-on-one meetings every single day and you're looking for a way to get energized, to get encouraged, and to make sure that you can start a group that really helps you go for the long haul, you're in the right place. This is a community where you are seen, safe, and secure and cared for, and we want to make sure that you get the resources and that you can have the sales conversations that you need to make sure that you have the clients, to make sure you have the groups that you want to in order to be successful. So without further ado, that's why we have Justin here today. Justin was a huge impact in my life, especially when I first started trying to get into the coaching world again. I've been coaching for a while. I had a lot of vision loss and hearing loss incidences that happened, and I just kind of decided I was done, and I decided that I wasn't going to start doing it for a while. And then came into contact with Justin, and he really helped me feel and understand that idea of inviting people, that's a key word, inviting people into what we have to offer is huge. And for the first time in my life, I actually felt good about sales and what I could do and be with people in that moment. And so I really wanted Justin to come on here and really talk to us because, and I'm going to let him talk in a minute, but the main problem that I keep on coming across with several of you guys is you guys have that agreement, you have that contract, whatever it looks like, you pass it off to your client, and I get these messages back from you all the time. Well, Bethany, I gave them the agreement, but they didn't show up or they didn't send it back. This is a huge invitation when we have that moment to have these conversations with our potential clients, to invite them into something. So instead of just sending the agreement, I want you guys to get curious in this conversation that we have today about what kind of conversations you can have with your potential clients. So with that being said, Justin, tell us a little bit about yourself, about Faith to Influence for those that may have not listened to last week yet, and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, the short version is, and I'm realizing I didn't properly answer your question ever in the last podcast episode. What does faith to influence do? I help Christian coaches and entrepreneurs optimize their business models, their pricing, and their sales strategies so that they can scale their income and their impact. God really blessed my business. I did over 250 grand in revenue my first year as a coach, and I was scared when I started. I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this, and so that was really a wonderful relief. But I realized that there were a few things I knew how to do well that many Christian coaches and entrepreneurs struggled with. And sales was the primary piece of that.
Yeah, and that's huge. And the Faith to Influence community and everything that they offer is so amazing, so much like family. And so, Justin, I pretend that I am starting out again and I am trying to get people and have those sales conversations. What is some of the biggest pieces of advice that you can recommend to those of us that are just like, where do we start? Where do we begin?
Yeah, I think one of the places to begin is in what we call the internal art of influence. It's what's going on in here and what's going on in here that oftentimes gets in the way for so many of us. And so we talk about elevating your identity or who you believe yourself to be. And then we talk about elevating your emotional state before you go into a sales call. Like, how are you feeling? Being thoughtful about that and having a pre-call ritual that helps you feel good. Because when you feel good, you'll be more confident. You'll have better results. And then the third piece of it is checking your stories. What are the stories you're telling yourself about sales and money? So oftentimes people have really negative stories about sales and money and a lot of doubt in those areas. And if we have really negative stories like sales is pushy or manipulative or greedy or money is bad and we shouldn't have it or we shouldn't seek it, all of a sudden, if we've got those stories floating around in here like soundtracks, we're going to self-sabotage. We're going to do the things that are in our least interest because we're not going to want to make sales or make money if we think they're bad things. And so we have to check how we feel about ourselves, what we're telling ourselves about sales and money, and how we feel going into sales conversations. If we get those pieces right, then everything else becomes easier.
Wow. And you could almost write a book just about that. I'm just saying, just like how you approach it, right? Because a lot of times I feel like we go into these conversations and we just have it systematic in our mind. You know, a client has to sign here, 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 and we don't get curious.
Mm-hmm.
And I love what you're saying about you approach this conversation, whether it's a sales conversation or even you mentioned last podcast, the referral conversation.
Mm-hmm.
You show up as the leader in those conversations. And so it really does, you have to get that mindset. So let's keep it real here. We've got some people in our community that are just starting this for the first time, whether they got their counseling license, whether they're a coach, whatever it looks like,
Mm-hmm.
they're doing this for the first time. How can you encourage someone that's doing this for the first time to get over this imposter syndrome?
Mm. You know, there's there's a few things that we could do. First and foremost, there's nothing better than the repetitions. Repetitions will get us over imposter syndrome faster than anything else. We just need to do it scared. And we talked about that a little bit on the last podcast. Like, most new people are going to feel scared. And so if you want to have the standard of, oh, once I feel good enough, once I feel confident enough, once I feel perfect enough, once I feel prepared enough, then I'll do it. You're never going to do it because you're never going to feel all those things until you get the repetitions. Maybe you'll feel that way after 30 repetitions, 30 times inviting somebody to buy, 30 times asking for referrals, etc. The best teacher is repetition. And while we're doing the repetitions and before we do the repetitions, if we want to get away from imposter syndrome, we probably want to surround ourselves with people who encourage us and make sure that we have people who speak life and believe in our dreams, who are like getting into our ears and our heads and talking to us. And so be thoughtful about getting in the right communities with the right people. We also want to start speaking more positive things to ourselves. An affirmation can be helpful to remind ourselves like of the goodness of who God created us to be. And then the third piece is the reminder to surrender to God and trust in Him, and just try to see ourselves the way God sees us, so that we can show up and honor the calling that He's put on our lives and know that He will equip us if He's called us.
And I think, man, you hit so many great things there. And one thing I'm hearing too is that I remember starting and learning this amazing sales process that you talk about in Faith to Influence and actually practicing it using our community, using the community there to have these, trial conversations, whatever you want to call it. But we really did practice that with one another.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm hearing you saying is that you mentioned the word 30, and I'm not taking anybody to tea with that. But what I'm also hearing you saying is that you're not expecting people to be perfect the first couple times they go, even though they may be an excellent coach or an excellent counselor. We might not be proficient at the whole sales process and actually sitting with the person well in that conversation. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and authenticity trumps perfection over and over. One of my first coaches, Hal Elrod, said, "Give up the need to be perfect for the opportunity to be authentic." And so it's okay for us to be imperfect. It's okay for us to be scared. It's okay for us to make a mistake. That's what makes us human. That's what makes us relatable. That's actually going to draw our tribe to us. In fact, it's not a problem as much as it's an opportunity to feel relatable and to make it easy for the right people to say yes. So be authentic, make mistakes.
And I love that line, make it easy for the right people to say yes. Love that. And one thing I want to bring out here that Justin's mentioning is that when you have that community, when you have those people to reach out to, you can practice with friends that are actually working on the same thing together, which Faith to Influence has, rather than necessarily going with client. You can do both. You want to do both. But one thing I'll say is that I remember one of the very first sales conversations I had, it did not go at all like I wanted it to. And it was with a great client, but this client flat out told me no. And I remember bringing that to our community going, what am I doing wrong? And I think others, people said, no, wait. You are doing this in a way that you want the right people to
Mm-hmm.
say yes. And I was like, oh, that's right. It's not about making the sale necessarily. It's about, wait, I want the right people. I want the people that God has called me to, because they're the ones that are going to be excited about these conversations that I have. So when I had that new mindset, that really changed the way that I thought about the sales process. So have you run into that, like where people are so determined, like, I need the sale, I need the financial support, whatever that is, versus no, I want the right person to say yes.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of salespeople have a sense of desperation, which I understand if you're a new entrepreneur, you're a new salesperson, or you're commission only, like you need to feed your family, you need to earn this sale. But like if we show up with desperation, or one of my mentors used to call it commission breath, If we show up with commission breath and desperation and scarcity, like we don't have enough and we need this and we need something from the other person for ourselves, we're not going to attract people. We're going to repel people. It's a problem. And so what we need to do is show up with an abundance mindset that says we know that we already have enough. Like I know that God will always provide for me. And in the times where I feel financially tight and feel stressed financially, if I just come back to just trusting God and saying I've got enough and God will continue to open more doors. I don't need any one sale. I don't need any one client. There's an abundance of opportunities out there. And we no longer need something from the other person. We're just there to serve and find out if it's a fit and look for the win-win scenario in business. I believe in win-win or no deal. And if we're unattached to the sale, that's when we're going to attract the sale. And so we need to be unattached and not need anything, but also be totally committed to serving and making it easy for the right people to say yes. We're trying to find that balance, and that's going to be really helpful in a sales conversation.
That's huge. Finding that balance. And that takes work and that takes community and that takes practice, right? That's what I'm hearing. So that's great. Justin, if people want to connect with you, they want to get to know more about the sales process, they want to see if faith to influence is a good connection with them, how would they go about doing that?
They can go to goodsalespdf.com, where we're going to have more information on that internal art of influence I talked about, plus our 10-step sales process. We want to give that to you for free at goodsalespdf.com. That'll also get you on our email list. So we'll email you our podcast and our weekly newsletter on sales and all of those other goodies. So goodsalespdf.com is the place to go.
That's great. And I do endorse Justin's sales process. I use that on a lot of my calls, if not every single one of my calls with clients. And, really, it does make sales feel good and it does make it easy for the right person to say yes. One other thing I want you to talk about right as we get off of here, Justin, is that I know many of our people, they have that agreement and they're with the person, and what if they have objections? Now, I know this is further down the process. If you get the PDF, you can learn more about that. But what is maybe one piece of information that you can give this? Because I know a lot of people, if they hear the objection, we're just like, we're out, we're done, we just walk away. How can we stay into that conversation with curiosity and love?
Yeah, two things. I want to encourage people to walk their prospects all the way through the buying process. And I want to encourage people to do that with calm and curiosity. So an objection is normal. It's just part of the process. One of my mentors used to say, the amateur receives an objection and they panic as if like they weren't expecting it or they've never seen it before. But the master receives an objection and says, an objection, to be expected. And it shouldn't be a surprise. It's part of the process. It's normal and okay for people to have questions. And so remaining calm and confident and curious is really important. 3 C's: calm, confident, curious. And curious sounds like, I totally understand. It is a big investment. Tell me more about that. Or how does that make you feel? Or where are you coming from on that? Or what's holding you back? Or talk me through your decision making process. How can I help? And if we just ask curious questions with the aim to help people make the best decision for themselves, we're going to do really well. And one other thing I know that, like, in the counseling world, people struggle with, you kind of shared this with me before, is that sometimes people will just say, okay, I'm going to send you the contract to your email, and they won't walk people through the rest of the process. So they'll never even hear the objection. They just don't get the contract back. They just lose the client, and there's nothing they can do about it at that point. So we want to walk people through the process and make it easy for the right people to say yes by capitalizing in the opportunity that, like, maybe at the end of a first appointment, a first meeting, saying, hey, next steps for us look like this. And here's how I work with my clients, and it costs this much. Would you like to do this? Yes? Okay, awesome. I've got the contract right here. Why don't I put it in the chat if you're on Zoom, or why don't I share it with you right now? You can start filling that out so I can be here to support you if you have any questions. And then we can talk about next steps and onboarding and get your next appointment lined up. And just walk them through that process like a professional who's done it before and make it easy for the right person to go all the way from interest to paying client so that you can serve them and have the impact that you know that they need and that you've been called to provide.
It's huge. So much goodness there. And I will say, as a sign off, it is really hard, and it was really hard for me to get the words out to ask people for their credit card number. I just couldn't, I struggled with that for the longest time. But what I'm learning from Justin and this amazing community is that we truly do have value, and you are inviting people not only to be with you, to be in community with you. You're inviting people to see how God has created you and how God is moving through them. Do not miss that opportunity, friends. We'd love for you to connect with Justin. And also, you can visit bethanyboring.com for any upcoming groups and to download the group's PDF as well. There's so many great resources, and I hope you hear from me and Justin both. We believe in you. We want you to take those next steps, and we want to be able to support you, however that may look like for you. And remember, dare to do more than just survive, step out and thrive. See you guys back next week. Bye.
Yeah.